Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to talk about this little teaser that came out during this week. So it is the announcement of the 3.9.0 expansion. Now I think the purpose of this was to hype ExileCon. I'm definitely heading to ExileCon, I'm really looking forward to it. But obviously it's a long way for a lot of people to get to. For me, it's only a couple of hours by plane to Auckland, and it's somewhere I wanted to go for a while anyway. So I think that's the primary reason that this post was made. But a little bit of information here saying that this is not going to be a normal announcement, that a normal expansion, but there's going to be some new things added in here. And I get real vibes of 3.1. This is War for the Atlas, which was also the Abyss League. So patch 3.1 introduced the Abyss League on one hand, and also contained the tier 1 to 15 Elder versus Shaper content. So the Shaper and his 4 Guardians were added in the Atlas of Worlds expansion, which was 2.4. So from memory, that was about a year before 3.2 came out. Sorry, 3.1. So tier 1 to 15 Elder versus Shaper content meant that you could get Elder and Shaper influence on tier 1 through 15 maps. You could spawn white, yellow, and red Elder, but then Uber Elder was not going to be added to the game until 3.2. Now this league was not marketed as the Abyss expansion or anything like that. It was marketed as the War for the Atlas expansion. And I think the content that was added at the time was great, even though it's gone a bit stale since, I think. Now, part of the reason that it's gone a bit stale is character power creep. And what I mean by this is that Shaper was designed at a time where 200 to 300,000 DPS on a tanky build, and when I say tanky, I don't necessarily mean super tanky builds that can, that can survive a critical strike from Shaper's slam attack, but builds that were designed to be fairly durable, that weren't glass cannons in any way. 200,000 to 300,000 DPS was considered pretty solid at the time that Shaper was added to the game. Now he has about 18 million hit points, which means that you need to be able to apply damage for 30 to 45 seconds in each phase, because you need to do about half of his life in each phase in order to drive him off, and then ultimately to kill him the third time. The fact that you needed to apply damage for 30 to 45 seconds usually meant that the individual encounters with the Shaper might go for 75 to 90 seconds, and this meant that there was enough time for volatile anomalies to come into play, to stack up on the field, and for you to have to carefully manage them in conjunction with the Shaper's Bullet Hell ability. Bullet Hell ability is something that is basically all but impossible to tank, and so everyone has to dodge that in the center, but that means you have to keep the center carefully clear of volatile anomaly explosions. However, at that time, you were talking about, a build that was doing a lot of damage could beat the Shaper from 100% to 0 in a minute. Maybe even 30 to 45 seconds. Nowadays, there are builds, and this is only at the glass cannon end, but still, there are builds that can measure their damage in Shapers per second. And this means that a whole lot of the Shapers attacks have just basically been power crept out of existence. Volatile anomalies, you might see one in a fight. Bullet Hell, you will have to manage this if and only if the Shaper actually initiates the encounter with it. And if he initiates the encounter with it, then there's no volatile anomaly to go with it. So this has rendered the Shaper a reasonably easy fight now. But the same thing is starting to happen with Uber Elder as well. Uber Elder was introduced and balanced around, I think, players having around 400 to 750,000 DPS. Once you hit 2 million though, the fight is pretty much trivialized. And the less that's said about having 20 million DPS in that fight, the better, because it just ends up that none of the bosses have a chance to really attack at all. You insta phase them, and then the encounter is over as quickly as all the phase transitions can happen. The biggest danger actually then, if you've got that degree of damage, the biggest danger is being killed by the adds because you don't see them. So characters have gotten powerful faster than the endgame has gotten harder, and this has rendered the Uber Elder encounter. I'm not saying that Uber Elder and Shaper are not challenging encounters for players the first time they do them. I know that I certainly failed several attempts at the Shaper before I was able to get him down, and I failed several attempts at Uber Elder before I was able to get him down as well. But what I'm saying is that once you get into the middle of a league, once you've made decent progression on your character, you can get to the point that these encounters are trivialized. They're far below you in the way that Uber tends to be far below an in-game character's capabilities now, and they're not really engaging to fight. There is some harder content available in the game, but nothing that can really be target farmed or traded for in any way. So All and Cortex come to mind as the end bosses of the Delve League and the Synthesis League, respectively. Both are still available in game, but both are much harder than Uber, and both of them are very rare encounters that are that you can't securely trade them, and that means that you can't, if your character wants to do a bunch of Cortexes in a row, you need to find other players that have a Cortex available right now. And that's a very difficult thing to do, and so as a result, it's not really done. There are also some lesser bosses of those encounters, things like the Twisted Altered Synthete and the like, that are mini bosses of those two leagues' content that are still available in the game and that form something that's easier than Uber, but probably more challenging than Shaper if you get them in monster level 83 zones. And those remain somewhat exciting, but they're not something that you can target farm, and they're not something you're going to be encountering very often in your play. So, what I'm hoping here, and I'm going to go through this expansion, I get a real sense that we're going to see something similar, where new content is added in a way at the top of the end game. And then Uber will sort of start to fill the role that Shaper has filled in recent expansions, and Shaper might be pushed back to the role that Uber has filled, while Uber gets pushed down into the role that Atsuri fills, of Atsuri sort of the first special boss that players encounter. Like if you're someone that's playing their first character, you're really happy to have just gotten Katava down in Act 10, and you've progressed a fair bit since then, you feel like your character's getting stronger, then you're like, okay, I want to take on a mechanical boss, something that'll be a real challenge for me. Atsuri or Uberlab are the two things that come to mind as the logical next step up. So now I think we'll see a bit of a shift of all of the old bosses down a tier. So Uber will be the new Shaper, Shaper will be the new Uberlab will be the new Atsuri, and so on. And here we've got so I'll read through the announcement and give you a sense of why I think that. So, during the live stream keynote announcement presentation at ExileCon on the morning of November 16, we'll unveil December's 3.9.0 expansion. While it's too early to reveal the full details of this release, we wanted to give you an idea of what to expect from the coming expansion. We settled on the term expansions for recent releases like Legion and Blight, because they add new content like skills and itemed Path of Exile, as well as containing the future full challenge leagues. 3.9.0 not only contains the usual content you'd expect from a regular PoE release, it also contains some game-wide expansion content that isn't tied to the league itself. And again, this is why I'm really getting a sense that this is like 3.1. The last time that they really did this, where the Abyss League was only a small part of the release, it was fine, but the big thing was the addition of War for the Atlas. And then the next league, Bestiary. The big part there was the Bestiary mechanics for all the problems that they had. But then there was also the smaller part, which was the addition of Uber as the end game of the previous league's content. It's a bit larger in size than any Path of Exile release in 2019. Can I just say I hope that that's pulled off? If it's not going to be pulled off well, if it's going to be a repeat of Synthesis, where there were lots of problems with that league early on because the scope may have just been a little bit too big. Hopefully they won't repeat those mistakes. Hopefully they'll trim down if needed. If they can pull it off as the biggest release, then great, but if they can't, then I hope they pull back from that. We've been really excited about a league idea we've wanted to do for a while, but didn't have the technology or resources to pull off. We can't share more details about the league itself just yet. I tell you, it contains a good balance of risk versus reward, compelling endgame content, and is a whole lot less server melty. So less server melty will be a good thing. There's been the last league that wasn't server melty was, ironically, probably the Betrayal League. Was the last one that didn't have a lot of bugs with the actual league content early on. Betrayal content early on was considered by many players to be overtuned, so as in it was too difficult. but it wasn't really lagging in the way that actually Betrayal does cause lag now. Betrayal was running a lot better at that point, and so it wasn't particularly server melty. Then we had Synthesis, which had a huge amount of early bugs and really wasn't in a release-worthy state until about the middle of the third week of the league. Then after that we had Legion, which was just crashing so often, for me at least. I wasn't getting the Betrayal lag, I was just getting instance crashes from all sorts of random things. I think I knew it was never able to place what it was. It did get a bit less bad when I changed skills away from Glacial Hammer and towards Cyclone, when I finally gave up on making Glacial Hammer work. At that point I did find that it started performing better, but it was still bad. And then, of course, Blight League. I've been having smooth sailing this league, but I know that many players haven't. I think there's two factors with Blight. The first one is that the servers themselves struggle with some of the degree of calculation necessary in the Blight maps if you're not able to kill things quickly, and so if the monsters start really building up, then at that point I think the Blighter maps start causing a lot of problems. Likewise with minions. I've not been playing a Necromancer build or anything like that, so I haven't been experiencing all of the massive numbers of calculations that come up when the monsters aren't just pathing to you, but they're making AI decisions whether they path to you or to one of your 34 different skeletons that you've got going at that time. And so the monsters have to decide what they're going to attack, then work out a path to it, then work out interactions with what they can and cannot collide with. It's an absolute mess. As I said, I'm not having problems, but I can understand why a lot of people are. And with the sheer number of monsters that are put out in the Blight encounters, they're definitely a big cause of this. So I'm looking forward to seeing something that is a bit less server melty, as they put it. Alongside the League and expansion content mentioned above, 3.9.0 contains some new item rewards that should provide interesting new character build options and a fresh metagame. I think this has been something that's been done pretty well in recent leagues. Not every individual unique has been a hit, but a number of them have been. We're also focusing some balanced attention on bows, though this revamp isn't of the same scale as our spellcasting and melee changes earlier this year. Here, bows at the moment are in a very powerful position overall. I think at the moment you have to say that bows are the archetype that is the most powerful in Path of Exile by a long way. So when I read this, there's a balanced attention on bows, I'm interpreting this as Tornado Shot is going to get nerfed so hard that its grandchildren still cry about it in 50 years' time, and that some of the other skills might be set as a baseline for where power should be. Scourge Arrow probably is also looking like getting a nerf, and then those are the two skills that are the most powerful at high gear level at the moment. Then there's a number of other skills that may actually be in a position where they can be, well, some of them might be buffed. A lot of them actually did get a buff in, a lot of them got a buff in 3.8. The fact is, though, that that even with the very considerable buff that Lightning Arrow got in 3.8, it is still so clearly inferior to Tornado Shot, even with Tornado Shot getting a mild nerf, that, yeah, you know, it's just off the planet, the difference there. So if Tornado Shot were to be nerfed hard, and Scourge Arrow were to be nerfed moderately, then that would open the space for the current status, because I think the current status of Lightning Arrow and the like, they're about the power level I think both skills should be at. They're strong, compelling choices, but at the moment there's just no reason to even consider them, because you use Tornado Shot or Scourge Arrow or you are wrong. The expansion also includes the usual Divination cards, unique items, new skills, and the like that you're used to from Path of Exile releases. A quick point on the Divination cards here. These have been getting better in recent times, and I think there's a reason for that. There were plenty of people who bought the Highgate expansion, the Highgate supporter pack. So when 2.0.0 came out, the core packs at the time included the Highgate supporter pack, which was an expensive supporter pack, like $1,000 US, I think, or something like that. It included Divination card commission, as well as all the usual things like the various cosmetics and the like, plus some physical swag. Now, because these Highgate supporter packs were something that had a bunch of other things with them, there would have been a number of people that wanted the digital cosmetics and bought the Highgate supporter pack because they could afford it and they wanted the cosmetics in it, and then got the Divination card commission and sort of treated it as a bit of an afterthought, and then eventually put in something that was like, oh yeah, what about a card for 3 Chaos Orbs? That sounds cool. Without putting any massive thought into making their card feel like it fit a specific niche in the game. Now, as a result of that, there's a number of cards that were designed early on that feel fairly uninspired now. However, the Divination cards now only get added by people who specifically go out of their way to buy a Divination card commission. And so for that reason, the ones that get submitted now are ones that someone cares about the submission. It's the reason that they've bought the Divination card submission, and so as a result, there's none of them that are being submitted as afterthoughts. This doesn't necessarily mean that every one of them is going to be something that's valuable or useful to you. So, for instance, if you're playing in a trade-enabled league, the Divination card for the Ancient Doom Prophecy is not something you're going to particularly care about all that much, but it's got a clear niche. Like, that is a Divination card for specifically designed for solo self-found characters. Those players will like it, and no one else will care. And then on the flip side, there's a number of Divination cards, like my one, the Price of Loyalty, that are absolute rubbish in a solo self-found environment because you could never compile a set of them. My Divination card drops either from stacked decks or from the Architect of the Breach, Zelkarpa, the Architect of the Breach, in a tier 3 upgraded Breach room in the Temple. And it's certainly not 100% drop rate either. So that means that you can't you can't complete a set of mine in solo self-found. If you're a solo self-found player, the card is rubbish. But if you're in a trade-enabled league, it can create some interesting moments when you buy a set from other players, or alternately, maybe you just have the cards drop for you and you're sort of happy to sell them. But if you buy a set by trading from other players to get them, then you can have a bit of fun when you turn it in. Every Divination card that's put out now is something that someone has thought about, someone cares about, and so I feel every one of them has a clear audience, and I'm always excited to see what the new ones will be. A couple that I'm interested we haven't seen yet. I'm surprised to see that we haven't yet seen a Divination card for Inspired Learning, either by itself or as a 2 Implicit Corrupted unique, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen Divination cards for Fossils yet, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm not intending to commission anymore in the short or medium term. One thing I will say while we're talking about itemization is a slight aside. I'd really like to see a reintroduction of genuinely rare unique items. Back a few leagues ago, I think it may have been about 3.1 or 3.2, all of the tier 1 rarity uniques. So this is the items like Chevron's Wrappings, Mjolnir. Not that Mjolnir is particularly good at the moment, but it's still rare. Chevron's Wrappings, Calm's Heart, Unnatural Instinct, the jewel, and the various other jewels as well that are like it. Inspired Learning being the other one. Those items that are all tier 1 rarity unique drops. All of them except for Headhunter had their drop rate multiplied by 4 some leagues ago. And this ended up in a situation where when they drop for you, it's gone from being, oh my god, this is the best thing that will drop for me all league, to, oh, that's a Chevron's Wrappings. Is that 2 Exalts now, or is it 50 Chaos? I'm not sure. At the moment, the only tier 1 unique items that are worth more than 2 Exalts are Inspired Learning, the jewel, Unnatural Instinct, the jewel, and Hiri's Ire. And earlier in the league, obviously, there'll be some more of these. But for most endgame players, the best single drop that they get in the league will either be a Divination card or a Watcher's Eye. And I'm just counting the Watcher's Eye when it drops unidentified, so that's that's a 3 or 4 Exalt item. If you then choose to identify it, you're taking a big risk with it, and you might get paid off, or you might lose that wealth. But it's 3 to 4 Exalts when it's still unidentified. If it's a 3 mod one, so one that drops from Uber Elder. So if a new chase item was added, and let's just say that it's named Stone of Eternity, if it was made genuinely rare, most endgame players won't have one drop, but some players will have it drop, and it'll make their entire league, the way that a Chevron's Wrappings or a Skyforce used to if it dropped for you. I never had any of the old Tier 1 uniques drop for me. I was in a group once where Mjolnir dropped, but it dropped for someone else, and they were absolutely stoked because I think at that time it was a 35 Exalt item drop. Again, that's going to be the best thing that they would get for the entire league. So I think that Tier 1 rarity uniques to be what old Tier 1 rarity uniques were when they were super exciting, you wouldn't just need to make them 4 times rarer, which would put them back to the rarity that Chevron's Wrappings used to be, because clear speed is so much higher than it used to be. I think if a new tier was added above Chevron's Wrappings and the like, I think it would need to be something like 10 times rarer than Chevron's Wrappings is now, maybe even 20. I think that would then put it in a situation where those items, assuming that they're good enough that they are in hot demand for at least for some players, in that situation I think they would be genuine chase items that would be super exciting if you got one. But that's just a bit of a quick aside. Let's go back to going through the expansion notes. We expect the PC version to release on Saturday, December the 7th, New Zealand time, with console versions the following week. We will announce the final firm date at ExileCon alongside other information. I'm very glad to see that they've used these sort of weasel words. They're not making a promise that it'll be December 7. They're saying that's when they think it will release. I really want to urge GGG to take their time and get it right. We've had several recent leagues where performance has been really bad early on. And so Blight, not so much affecting me, but Blight's been bad for most players. Legion was terrible for me, but was not so bad for most other players. I was crashing all the time in Legion early on. Then there was Synthesis, which wasn't so much crashing, but I'd had the Betrayal lag was a serious problem there, and also had the serious bugs around the Nexus early on, where items were going missing in Decay, which was a very serious bug. Betrayal was actually a fairly smooth launch, for all the problems it's caused later with Betrayal lag. And then Delve was an absolute clusterfuck at launch, but it was then rectified over time. In the thing with Delve, though, Delve should have been delayed 1 week. However, GG got away with it because they were able, by about day 5 of the league, the big bugs were fixed in Delve. So Delve is now remembered fondly. People have forgotten how bad it was days 1, 2, 3, 4, when the overwhelming consensus on Reddit was, if you are playing in hardcore, do not go into the mines at all, because you will die to darkness despite throwing flares. Flares were not working for a whole period, but they look like they worked on your screen, and then boom, you're dead. All sorts of absolute serious problems with Delve. They were all patched by the first major patch afterwards, and Delve ended up being fine. But if the league isn't in a good state by day 7, it will die. That's what happened to Synthesis, and that was really hurting Blight as well. So definitely stick to these weasel words. Be willing to invoke that clause, and that's an escape clause. If it's not ready on the 7th, then delay it to the 14th. If it's not ready on the 14th, I could understand not wanting to delay it to the 21st. That's probably too close to Christmas for comfort. You're not going to be able to get a patch out during the week that includes Christmas. But perhaps consider putting it out on the 17th. It doesn't have to be a Saturday. So the last thing that's said here is that 3.9.0 will have its own set of League supporter packs, replacing the Blight ones. Blight ones didn't do anything for me, but then again, I'm pretty much at cosmetics overload point at the moment anyway, so I'm not really upset to have two of them come out that don't connect with me because they were cool, they just weren't my style. We expect these to come out in the week following ExileCon. However, this is a big one. Last December's core supporter packs with physical goods were really successful, so we plan to release another set this December also, which will of course contain new physical goods. This means that the current core supporter packs will leave the store in a couple of months. We'll announce the exact date of their end in the following weeks, so you can plan your purchases accordingly. Now, obviously, an obligatory note here, don't buy luxury items like Crucible or Empyrean packs with borrowed money, but if you can afford them but only by saving and you want them, then start saving right now, because if you definitely want to buy them, because they are expensive. You can make up your own mind as to whether they're worth buying or not. A quick suggestion to GGG though, and this relates to the various bespoke services they also offer, like Divination card commissioning, and if they still offer unique item commissioning, that as well. At the moment, if you buy a Crucible supporter pack, and I assume this will apply to whatever replaces the Crucible pack in the future, you can email support and then buy an add-on that allows you to commission a Divination card. I can understand them not wanting to have super high-priced items on the main, on the main store page. So if you have a look in the buy pack section of the store, we'll zoom down here. You see that the highest, firstly, the bottom item on the list is the First Blood pack, but then the Crucible pack here is the most expensive item that is listed on the Path of Exile store. I can understand them not wanting anything higher price than that on it, in order to just not say that how expensive things can get. But I do think that they should have a second shop page that's only eligible when if you've got the current top supporter pack, that then allows you to commission, to purchase a commission for a Divination card or a unique item without having to go through the current rigmarole of, I think I had something like 10 email back and forths with support on my last Divination card order. So that's something that is just a small suggestion there that I think could be done at the same time as the core packs. So let's say that, let's say that your new the new top tier pack would be a name, Planar Supporter. I don't know. If they made it a Planar Supporter was a new top tier, then you'd have just all of these sorts of things, and then have a note down here that says Divination cards. The Planar Supporter pack doesn't include the ability to design a Divination card, but it does entitle you to purchase one if you'd like. If you will receive a private message on the forums with a link to a new page, and follow that, and then you'll be able to commission a Divination card or commission a unique item if they're still offering that. So that'd be something I think would just be a major store quality of life item there. So then they finish up, of course, with we're really looking forward to next month, where we can show you what we've been working on. As I said, I'm looking forward to ExileCon as well. Anyways, that's the announcement of the announcement of the announcement. There's nothing huge in this news, but it's just simply something interesting as a first point to pay attention to. We'll find out a lot more during ExileCon. Keen to know if you're intending to head to ExileCon, so definitely say if you are in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll leave it there, and I hope you have a good one.